All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. Today, we're gonna be working on a project for a customer, and this one is gonna require us to go up to the sawmill, get some materials, and we're gonna come down here and we're gonna take the CNC and we are going to make a project. So if you wanna see how a trip to the sawmill and a little bit of some old rough cut lumber turns into this guy right here, then stick around and I'll show you how we did it. All right, guys, so this project started the same way as many of the projects that I do here in the shop. A lot of the jobs that I do are, of course, custom stuff. They come in through my Facebook page from local folks in the area, and so I'll knock the jobs out and take pictures, put on my Facebook. It's a whole local marketing thing for me through the Facebook page as well as some word of mouth. But that's how I stay in business, and I use those jobs a lot of times to show you guys how I do things here around the shop. So to start off with, we're gonna have to source the material. We're gonna have to pick a very specific piece of material because she's wanting this thing like 10 or 11 inches by like 20 inches. So that's not gonna be a small piece of material. And to try to keep the cost down, instead of going out and trying to source a 12-inch wide piece of whatever kind of wood, having access to the sawmill, having access to my own cut wood. I've got some up there for this project. Even though it's only air dried, it should work for what we're doing. So let's get started and let's go see what we got. All right, guys, we're up here. Some of y'all have probably never saw this place before. It's gotten a little grown up, but I'm up here at the sawmill, and for this job, I feel like since it's just a wall sign, decorative sign, they're wanting it on like a 10-inch wide board. Those are kind of hard to come by. And if you buy them, they're a little expensive. So maybe I can find something up here that'll work. So let's hop at it. All right, so I haven't done a lot of cutting up here lately, but this stuff's been sitting here for several months. And I've got this pile over here to pick through. And like I said, for a 10-inch wide board, there's an old red oak right there that would work. I've got some other spalted, like little offcuts. Those don't look real flat. That must have been a bad blade. But this one looks pretty good. Wouldn't take a whole lot to get this going. So may take this one down to the shop and use it. I've got other like slabs and thicker pieces. But for this little wall sign, I really only need a piece about like that big. And I could leave this on there. That just add a little flavor for it. So I think all in all, I think that piece may work. Of course, we could always go with a piece of cedar as well. So let's ponder on that. All right, so we don't get to see these tools a whole lot here on the channel, guys. But today we're gonna have to be using the chop saw. We're gonna use the chop saw, we're gonna use the planer, and we're even gonna use my little DIY router table over here to do the round over after we get the machine done, the machine part from the CNC done. We're gonna put a nice round edge on that thing. So these tools, the chop saw, I'm gonna use that to break down the material, get it into more manageable pieces. Once I get it broke down into smaller pieces, because the shop's it's kind of tight here. And if you're like me, you don't have room to be maneuvering a 6 or 8 foot piece of material. So I'm gonna chop it down to roughly 20 inches or so. And then we're gonna run it through the planer, try to get us at least one flat side on it. Hopefully I can flip it and run it and flip it and spin it, and hopefully I can get it flat enough to do this sign for this guy's workshop just by using the planer. But if not, we could always flatten it on the CNC. But I'm hoping to avoid that. So let's get started, get the prep work done, and we'll get the file set up. All right, guys, don't get to see this angle of the shop very often. I've taken the ends off of that board. It had a little checking going on there on the ends a lot of times, especially the stuff I cut on the mill. Oak loves to split as it dries. The one thing that I am checking though is to see what the moisture content is in the material. I didn't want it like house dry at like 8%, but this is going around 12 or 13%, and that's really not bad this time of year in Alabama. So for a workshop sign, I think we're gonna be good. If it was above 20%, I probably would have come up with a different plan, but luckily, I'm able to run it through the planer a few times, and I get it flat enough to do this sign that we're trying to do. All right, guys, so now that we got the material all set up and ready to go, we got it slicked down, got it flat, it's gonna be an awesome sign once we get it built. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna have to measure the exact dimensions of the piece of material that we have, and we're gonna go over here on the computer, jump into VCarve, and we're gonna lay this thing out and try to come up with the closest design that we can to what the customer wanted. And I'll show you guys up here. This is kind of what she sent me as far as a go by, and we're gonna try to stay kind of with that inspiration, but put our own little swing on it. So let's drop into Vectric and get started. All right, so first step, guys, of course, is always get the exact size of your material. You at least want to be really close tolerances with this. So this way, when I go over to Vectric here, we can take and bring that piece of material in here, you know, just to make sure everything fits. And you do want to leave, especially like with this situation where I'm using some clamps as well as the tape, you do want to leave a little bit of a buffer there. Typically speaking, those little clamps that I use, they overhang the material around 4 millimeters. You know, you can get really close. I can even like trim them, but if you cut them too much with the router, with the spindle, they will turn loose. So I want to try to stay away from them. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the material in Vectric, and then I'm doing some offset little rectangles right here, putting a little bit of a bevel around in the corners so that I get that look that I want with the sign. I'm having to play with the size to try to get everything to fit and look the way that I wanted to. Had a little controversy on which font I wanted to go with, but ended up thinking that, you know, if this was my workshop sign, you know, this is a font that I think would be pretty good. You don't want anything too feminine. You don't want anything too, you know, overboard one way or the other. This felt like a good font to use. What I'm doing here is I'm basically grouping those up, and that way I can resize everything and kind of get it the way that I feel like it ought to be laid out. Other than the general go-by, I pretty much have complete artistic control over this design. This is just some little tools that I found on Adobe. So I'm going to go in and do some modifications to the way that's laid out. If it was a laser file, I probably would have left those in there. But I feel like with this sign, just to keep it simple, I just want this to be a raised shape that kind of silhouettes the screwdriver and the wrench. I will be mirroring that one because I want it mirrored so that the screwdrivers are both pointing outward and the wrenches are both pointing inward. It's just my OCD. But once I got all that set up some tool paths using the 3 bits. Like I said, I used the mini Jenny, the 16th inch ball nose Jenny for the cleanup on that, and then I did the cut with a 1/4 inch Jenny. The reason I did the cut with the 1/4 inch Jenny is just that cutting the material, the speeds that I like to run, it's a little more pressure on the bit, so the 1/4 inch just gives me a little more rigid of a tool. And you'll see that this is what the preview turned out. So let's send it. All right, guys, so for the machining of the material, the most important thing with this operation is going to be I've got to make sure I get this material held in place. So work holding is going to be the first order of business, of course. I'm going to be using the tape as well as some clamps and my little dogs that are in my spoil board here. All that stuff is 3D printed, and what that does is it allows me, the 3D printed dogs, the 3D printed clamps, it basically allows me to, if I hit one of those, as long as I don't hit that bolt that connects into my T-track, I'm good. I can just print another one and go after it. It doesn't hurt the bits. Now, for this job, the way we've got it designed and got it set up in VCarve, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using 3 different bits, as you saw. We're going to be using the mini Jenny to do most of the clear out with it, to do the roughing for the interior. And the reason I went with the 1/8 inch bit, you could do a 1/4 and then walk it down, or you could do a 1/4 and then just go straight into the ball nose. But the reason that I didn't is because I've got some other stuff that I'm going to be doing, so I'm not really in that big of a rush. And in the event that you know, I run this, I kind of want if there is any witness lines visible in the background of the engrave, I kind of want them to be at least consistent, so maybe I can hide them and not have to sand it as much. So we're going to be running the 1/8 inch mini Jenny to do the roughing. Then I'm going to come behind that with the skinny Jenny, which is the 1/16 tapered ball nose bit from my buddy over at Cadence Manufacturing. And there will be links down below, guys, for the bits that I'm using. Cody's just came out with a bunch of new 1/8 inch bits as well. that will probably be in the shop here pretty soon, especially for you guys with the smaller machines. But just because you have a bigger machine doesn't mean you can't run an 1/8 inch bit. Sometimes I enjoy running them because, for one, a lot of times they're cheaper. But 1/8 inch bits give you the ability to get in those little nooks and crannies a lot easier than the 1/4 inch bit. As long as you're not in a rush, you just put it in there and let that thing eat. So then for the cutout, we're just going to go ahead and make it quick. I'm going to sacrifice 1/4 inch of the material, but we're going to be running the 1/4 inch Jenny to do the cutout. So we're going to get everything set up and send this guy and pick up from there. So let's get started. All right, guys, so now that the machining is done, we've got all the material removed. The sign's starting to look like what I want it to in the end. So now what we've got to do is I'm going to be using a combination of a little plastic bristled brush that I use for my drill, as well as just a random orbital sander to try to sand that thing down and get as many of those little frizzies and those little pieces of material on the top as that you see. We'll try to get most of those off without having to do a whole lot of hand sanding, if possible. Worst case, you may have to just get some little pieces of sandpaper or some sanding sticks and get in there and get after it. But I got lucky on this one. I was able to do it all with the machines and got it ready to go to the next level. Now, in the beginning with this project, it was going to be just a clear coat only. That's what the customer had said that she wanted. But the more I looked at it, I did not like the look, and I'm hoping that she agrees with me, because I went ahead and backed up and punted on that, and I have now done the black paint fill on the material and ran it through the planer, sanded it, and now it's off to clear coating. So I'm going to walk you through the next few steps and show you where we're at this point in the project. All right, guys, so to prevent any kind of paint bleed, if you're ever going to backfill one of these things, clear coat it first. Basically, the clear coat is going to seal the material so that when you spray it with the black paint is going to be the very outer surface of the material. The more clear coat, the better, because that way you don't have to worry about it bleeding all the way into the material. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that and I'm just going to run it through my planer, and I'm just going to take like a 1/16 off, just enough to take the black paint off of the surface of the material. And yes, if you don't have a planer, you can do this with just a sander. It's just going to be a little more time consuming. with the sander and some 80 grit than it is with a planer. I'm going to drop it down just a little more because that pass, as you saw, I didn't get a good cut. The planer's basically still set where it was when I was flattening this thing. I haven't changed it. So this should bring it down a good bit. And you can see there I'm getting nice clean edges where everything goes together. No bleed marks or anything like that. I got one little spot right there where it didn't quite go deep enough. So I got a little bit of color still. So I'm going to run one more pass. Just another couple of thousandths or whatever I dial this thing down to. Just walking it down really slow. That's one reason why when I set this tool line up, I also set it kind of deep. Then I'm going to take it over here. This is my little round over bit that I use on most of these little projects. My little DIY router table here. And I'm just going to put a round edge on the face side of this material just so that it just looks a little cleaner, a little more finished, and kind of, used rustic look. This thing right here, the biggest thing I have trouble with on my router table a lot of times is I forget that, there's only one way that this works really well so that it doesn't kick back. Because that router bit will grab and kick back if you go the wrong way. So I'm really careful with my fingers and all that good stuff here. So there you go. I'm going to go one more pass. I like to, just as good measure, make 2 passes. That way if I held off somewhere and didn't have enough pressure applied, or especially on those corners when you're turning, sometimes you'll move the material away from the bit and it won't do the round over as well as you want it. So it's always a good idea, in my opinion, just to make 2 laps, just to be sure. And there you go. As you can see, nice rounded over edge. Not too much. It's just a little easier to do than having to do it with sandpaper. Now I'm going to go back. This is just some 120 grit and my random orbital DeWalt with my little HEPA vacuum hooked to it, and the dust collection for it. And as you can see, I still got a couple of millimeters of material difference in the background and the foreground there. That's why I went that like 3 or 4 millimeters deep that I did with the engrave on the design. It gives me a little more room to work with. And we're back outside now. I'm going to be clear coating this thing with some more of the Rust-Oleum 2X clear coat. I'll use polyacrylic a lot of times to do my initial seal because it draws into the wood really quick and dries faster. But after I've applied some kind of spray paint, like the 2X black for the background or whatever, I like to use just a clear spray paint. It works just as good. Sometimes I get a little bit better gloss out of it, and so that's what we're going to end up finishing this thing with. And it's going to take several coats for me to get it the way that I want it to be. And go from every direction, every angle. You can never go from too many different angles because there's always going to be those little like spots on the sides of those letters and stuff like that that need to get a little bit better coating. But yeah, multiple coats. And here I'm going to use my little 3D printed stands. I'm going to raise this up. This is another separate pass that I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get those edges all the way around. And by putting them on those little stands like that, that gives me the ability to get to those edges a little bit better. And make sure I get a nice coverage around the edges to get it sealed, because that end grain, sometimes it'll soak it up pretty good, but this has already been sealed pretty well with the clear, but I didn't go all the way around the bottom. So there you are. We're going to do some more clear coating, but let's wrap things up, guys. All right, guys, so after all of that work and a little bit of clear coat, this is where we're at right now. It looks really good in my opinion. The red oak, it kind of pops. It's got a little bit of a contrast to it with the black. I really like that. As you can see, using the compression bits, Jenny bits, I have found they don't leave that many witness lines and things to go back and sand. And with this particular piece, like I said, it's a workshop sign. It turned out great. Of course, it did get the stamp on the back of it. I still got to clear coat it. I'm going to put a few more layers of clear coat on it, maybe even sand it just a little more around the edges because it's starting to, it's got a little bit of that water pop going on with it from the clear coat. So I'm going to let that sit. Hit it with a little bit more 120, maybe some 220 sandpaper, a couple of more coats of clear coat, add the little wall hanger, and we are done with this. But cool little project, especially seeing how it came from some recycled red oak that I collected up at the sawmill. So, all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope the project was interesting to you. I hope you thought it was cool, the way we went about sourcing the material, making the project. It is definitely one of those things that just, to me, it just looks awesome. Doing it on a CNC with that black background like that. And then the wood popping out from it. I think it just looks awesome. Let me know what you think down below. And guys, if you're looking at getting into CNCs, just remember this sign, you could have done a scaled down version of this sign on basically any CNC. Now, if you're going to do one this size, you're going to need, you know, at least a 20-inch work area, because the piece was a little over 20 inches. The material is a little over 20 inches, and the actual design was around 20 inches. So you have to take that into consideration. But in my opinion, as long as you're good with doing the smaller jobs, guys, there's some really good small CNCs out there to help you learn, get you established in the hobby, understand what you're doing, and maybe even build a market for some small objects, and then, you know, scale up. That's what I did. I started with a 16 by 16 work area on a Genmitsu 4040 Pro, and I've just moved up as I've gotten bigger machines. I just do bigger projects now, which does open me up to a larger market, because a lot of people can't do a 4 foot by 4 foot. So that is an advantage, but you don't have to start there. You can start at a 16 by 16. You can start at an 8 by 8. You pick the machine, find products that you can sell to support your hobby or your side hustle or whatever, and then scale up from there. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither does your business have to be. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you like the CNC content, feel free to comment. Let me know. I'll try to do more. But for now, I'm just using the jobs as they come in to create content for you guys. So until next time, be safe and have a good day.